Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Hi everyone, my name is Chloé Messdaghi, and welcome to another episode of Secure Your Strategy, the podcast brought to you by ITSP Magazine. And with me today, I have a fabulous person, Ian Hill, who gave the keynote over at InfoSec Europe this year. Ian, why don't you tell the lovely people about yourself?
Thank you very much, Chloé. My name's Ian Hill. I am the Director of Information Cybersecurity at a company called Up Corporation, who are a large regional broadband fibre to the premises company within the United Kingdom. I've been there for about a year now, and I've been in the cyber and information security world for way too long, over a quarter of a century now. And that sounds really a long time when you mention it like that. But, you know, I've taken all the rough with the smooth, and I'm still here, still fighting.
So you've seen some things, and I would imagine maybe when you were at InfoSec Europe, got overwhelmed by the amount of vendors. And I don't know about you, but getting all those, it seems like it's getting worse every year. Because now they will contact you excessively on LinkedIn. They will find out where you live and send you something in the mail. They will call your phone. They will do everything possible. And I don't know about you, but that seems awfully terrible to deal with as someone who's a CISO. So tell us about how was the scene when you were there?
It was good fun. It was great to see InfoSec really sort of coming back to strength over at Excel Centre. One thing I did notice actually was a lot of new vendors I had not seen there before. Some of the big vendors missing. I was surprised not to see the likes of Checkpoint, Fortinet, people like that. But a lot of new vendors. So I think there's a lot of new people coming into the market, new vendors coming into the market. But you're right. I mean, it's a very vibrant scene. And I've learned from going to InfoSec many times, don't pick up any merchandise, because you have to, in order to have the merchandise, they scan your badge. And then that's just, you're going to get bombarded with emails and phone calls and text messages and things like that. So back in the day when I was, maybe a green behind the ears techie, I'd pick up every bit of merch going, and come out with bags of it, but not now, because it's one of those areas that I find quite frustrating as a seasoned CISO. And when I go into a company and that, I get to know the business, I get to know the risk, I get to understand the business requirements and what products and services are needed, and I get bombarded every day, literally every day, phone calls, emails, LinkedIn requests from vendors trying to sell me stuff, cyber bling as it's becoming known, without having any idea what my risk profile, my business risk profile is. I know about that, but it's interesting because shows like InfoSec are really great for getting out there once a year or however many times to go to different shows and seeing what's out there, seeing for yourself. When I go to InfoSec, I've got an agenda in my mind. I want to see some of the meet up with friends and network, go to some of the sessions, but I would also go around the vendors at my leisure, looking at where things are going, what's new, what's old, what's going on, and in the back of my mind, if you like, reconciling that with what I know I need for my business, if I need anything at all. So I do find it very frustrating to have people ring me up, and I do appreciate these guys. They're salespeople. My son works in vendor sales, so I know what it's like. They've got targets to meet, but I think that's something, Chloé, that potentially there are so many vendors in the marketplace now, so many products. I think there's much more competition now, so it's much harder getting the deals. I think that's what's making a lot of the sales guys sort of more aggressive and maybe slightly intrusive, because they've been given tough targets in what I think is becoming quite a saturated market space. And I think when I go to InfoSec and you see so many new vendors you've not seen before, and I'm thinking, no, this is quite interesting actually. But I didn't actually see any radically new technology or service. Same stuff. Exactly, Chloe, exactly. Every so often you get something that springs up. You think, oh, that's interesting. Let's have a look at that. But you're right. Generally, it's the same stuff. But I really enjoyed it. Certainly in the UK, it's the place to be. I know, over in the States, you guys have RSA, and I've been to that before, and that's massive.
Massive indeed. I got the opportunity to go to InfoSec Europe. I think it was in 2018, I want to say. But I absolutely loved it. I went there, and the same time was B-Sides London, so I got to go to both. And it was so much fun. But yeah, InfoSec Europe, the vendor scene was very much like RSA conference to me in many ways. But it was good. It was a lot of fun. There was like a good number of I would say like coffee. Like they'll have like these nice baristas that are like making you coffee or tea, and I absolutely love that. So I had a lot of fun there. I hope I'll go next year. But you also did give a keynote talk about the conflict between, compliance and security. And I know this is a subject that people are, there's so many conversations about it, but basically everyone is on the same page when it comes to, can we have like a framework that actually works? Can we have a compliance checklist that's actually something that I will use that will actually protect this company?
Exactly.
And then can you give me something where it doesn't take all my time because I don't have enough time? And I feel like that's kind of like the biggest issues that are facing when we talk about compliance and security, because everyone wants to have an incident response plan, but no one has the time to lead that charge to have something that's up to date. And so this becomes like that constant, like this thing where it's like, well, we're trying to be proactive, but we're going to always be reactive because we don't have enough time, nor people, nor resources to push us forward.
Absolutely. And let's be straight. Compliance is important. It's fun. Compliance and standards that are fundamental to information security. But the problem I have is where compliance leads the security agenda. I started off with a very common saying: compliance doesn't give you good security, but good security gives you compliance. And it's making sure that you don't fall into the security by compliance strategy. And of course, you've got the common standards, and ISO 27001, big one. And I used that as an example in the presentation, that the difference between the two views is that a compliance or security by compliance strategy will take ISO 27001, go through all the different Annex A controls, say, right, what do we have to do this? What do we have to do that? Okay. Whereas the other way around, you should have a robust security posture and strategy where you can go to 27,000 and so on, just go, yes, all the way down. And that's what I was trying to get across. So it's just a different mindset, a different way of thinking. Of course, part of the problem as well is that, just as you alluded to, there's no one size fits all from standards and regulations. And you'll often find that mature companies will actually adopt their own security framework, which is a hybrid of two. And after talking to many of my peers, the two that often crop up together are NIST CSF and 27001. Clump those two together, you've sort of got most of what you need. Obviously, there's things like PCI DSS, so if you're handling card holder payments and things like that, you've got to do PCI as a requirement for the standard. But it's looking at what you need as a business. And businesses are different. I've worked in finance, I've worked in telecommunications, I've worked in the construction industry. And the security requirements and posture of the construction industry are very different from the finance industry, not least of all because the regulations are very different. So you start with the business, what the business does, the process, the security posture, the risks. I'm a big fan of SABSA. I mean, you guys have heard of SABSA, of using SABSA methodology for working out what it is I need right at the bottom level, and then aligning the appropriate standards and regulations and that to that once I've got to that point, rather than trying to drive a strategy based purely on something like 27001, whatever here, Cyber Essentials or something, because you're going to end up with gaps and you're going to end up with problems. And so that's primarily what the session was about. It really, it seemed to sort of stir up some very interesting conversation. And I think part of the time as well, because there is such a big drive within a lot of business to improve their security posture, they're possibly new to this, and so they're looking for a quick way of improving posture, and things like 27001 stands and that look like a quick route in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any time we can like shortcut through things, I think that's where we're kind of going for. Loopholes are everyone's favorite thing. You did mention something that was quite interesting, was the fact of taking in consideration the different industries you work in. Like here we have like the HIPAA, for example, the healthcare. But it always kind of reminds me a little bit of what you're sharing was, I don't know how familiar you are with SASB. So they do like the ESG ratings, but it's broken down by different industries and what are the things they need to highlight and be aware of the future risks for them. And I was just thinking maybe that's something that is really more needed now than ever, because, every security department is going to be different depending on the industry it works in. Like education, you're going to have other privacy things you're going to have to be more aware of versus, say, finance. And so it makes a lot of sense. And do you see that being kind of like the road for the future when it comes to cybersecurity and compliance?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I just as you were saying that, I was thinking that along similar lines, something that's starting to gain traction over here in the UK, which is something that you've had in the States for a while, is SOC 2. And SOC 2 is now starting to sort of get much more established over here as something that's broad enough and sort of deep enough to cover not everything, but wider level of bases. Again, it's something we've just done in the company I've got, that I work for. It's a difficult one to predict where things are going. That's the trouble with these sort of standards. One of the things I mentioned in the session was standards tend to take a long time to keep up. So I use the example 27001. We've got 2022 version now. Previous version was 2013. So in the new controls that are included in the 2022 version are things like data leak protection. So it's taken the ISO standard 9 years to include data leak protection in their standard. So, it's
we're getting there eventually, right? We'll be faster, hopefully one day. I mean, with AI and machine learning and security, that's going to motivate everyone to push out new frameworks, new compliance needs.
Well, again, you're absolutely right, because none of it. So, we've got NIST 2.0 coming out, or no, NIST whatever it's coming out. It's NIST 2, isn't it? We've got, none of that seems to sort of really take into consideration things like artificial intelligence and the risks that are associated with that. It's quite interesting because at InfoSec there are a lot of people talking about AI risks, and from both an attack perspective and a defense perspective. I think that's something that standards will try and catch up with, but I tend to think actually that there is a risk of AI right at this minute, but it's not quite what we think it is. And having talked to my peers and experienced myself, the biggest worry I've got with artificial intelligence is like our marketing and sales departments using ChatGPT to do sales and marketing material, or trying to use it to do some sort of analytics and things. So they're like, oh, I've got ChatGPT, this is really handy, but let me throw all this company information into it and see what it comes back with. So all these big fears of AI attackers and Terminator and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm far more worried about what our employees are using it for, thinking it's a shortcut to sort of do some of their work and not appreciating the risks of potentially sharing information, like personal information or whatever, with this thing and not knowing really what's happening to that information.
It goes into this black box of complete mystery, and then we have to figure out what is this mystery like, but then we don't have time to look into the mystery nor to figure out how MLs are designed. It's great. It's like, it seems like the perfect situation for a risky situation to occur.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that a lot of security professionals now are including that on their risk registers, saying like, what is the risk of AI? And again, it will vary from business to business. It's an emerging risk, as you've got ChatGPT-4 and you've got all these other new large language model engines coming on board. So, not taking away from all the current risks we have to put up with, I can see in the future that's going to be something that's going to have a lot of people scratching their heads.
Yeah, I've already kind of seen like how different organizations in InfoSec right now are trying to figure out, okay, how do we let people know about these risks and let them understand how these risks play out in ML worlds, because it's not always going to be traditional security that could be used on AI in general. And like seeing this scramble happening where everyone's like, oh my God, we need to do something about this like really fast. It seems like we're kind of just trying to figure it out rapidly fast. Well, the whole world's already starting to use it and it's been pushed out, and now it's just getting more and more out there. And I that's something that concerns me, is like we need to get a little bit faster and more proactive, but it's always a hard thing. And I don't know if you've noticed it too, but like our industry, so many people are burned out. They don't have enough time and they feel exhausted. And now they have to learn how ML are designed and to understand how those play security risks. I don't know about you, but is there any advice that you have for people or leaders that are dealing with these situations? Because it is important for us to learn, but it's always hard to get in new information when we're burned out because we're not taking it in.
You're absolutely right. And I've noticed that certainly in the last few years, and I've been at CISO level for a long time, that I am seeing burnout a lot at the CISO level and at the senior cyber level, because it's relentless. It's just one thing after another. You feel like you're being you are being attacked all of the time, especially in large companies that I've worked for. You're just under attack all of the time, and it's like the arcade game Whack-A-Mole.
Yes,
Where
it's Whack-A-Mole.
It is
completely Whack-A-Mole.
You're playing Whack-A-Mole all the time. I think I've changed my view over sort of cyber strategies over the last few years. And I've sort of come up with a bit of sort of my own sort of personal framework as a CISO of how I sort of adopt things. And it's about spreading the load. Back in the day, and to a lot of companies these days, still have that very much siloed mentality to cybersecurity. So you've got this team of cyber professionals, InfoSec professionals under a CISO. It's sort of a bit of a sort of dark art, and they send out diktats about what you can and can't do, and you can't question what they do, and you're never really sure what goes on. They spend lots of money, and it's like, don't worry, we're protecting the business. And that very much siloed approach and slightly autocratic approach, for me, that's out of the window. I've very much evolved to a more federated security strategy. We've got to a point in time where information security is everyone's problem and everyone's responsibility. So federate that out into the business. So I've started my own sort of journey with this, with the companies I've worked for recently, much smaller cyber team. and a much more federated responsibility of security across the entire business amongst the subject matter experts within their own functions. And at the same time, look more to outsourcing to manage detection and response, outsource companies. Because the attacks are getting so complex, so sophisticated, the threat landscape is increasing almost exponentially. Very few companies can afford an internal capability to meet the demands. And so I've noticed that there is very much more sort of, if you like, a proliferation of MSSPs doing the full package detection response. So if you like, outsourcing as doesn't mean to say you still don't need your cyber team internally, but by knowing that you've got a trusted partner with vast amounts of resources that are watching your back, I put it, previous company, I put it quite bluntly to an MSSP that we eventually took on. I said, look, I want to give you the scenario I want is like, you ring me up at 12:30 on a Sunday morning. You've got ransomware. We've got it contained. Go back to sleep. That sort of relationship with an MSSP where they're watching your back. They've got the resources and capability. But at the same time, you've got a niche little cyber team internally and a federated responsibility, giving ownership and responsibility to a far wider group of people within the business who can support and be part of the defense and response. And very much, and that for me helps sort of, if you like, reduce the sort of stress levels. I mean, you still get stressed. CISOs are naturally stressed anyway.
Yeah.
It comes with the territory.
Don't stress right now.
But if you've got a lot of people that have got your back, it makes life a bit easier.
I would agree on that. I think that's one of the things that I know that some CISOs, they've been actually considering leaving the field because they don't feel like anyone has their back. They feel like they're very isolated and alone and no one's listening to them. And then they have to take on so much risks without any protection for themselves. And that concerns me if we're going to a future where cybersecurity is going to be having a bigger and bigger role ahead of times. What are we doing to ensure that our leaders are feeling welcomed and belonged so they can be successful in protecting the company, but also their team is going to be running healthy because their CISO is also running healthy?
That's a business problem. If the CISOs feel like they're on their own trying to protect and they don't have the support, that's a business problem. Then that's a problem with the leadership team of the business or business culture. And, either that business culture has to change or, yeah, you're absolutely right. The CISO find a job where they have the support of the business and, the business as a whole, not just the leadership team, the business as a whole. But you're absolutely right. And I've got peers in my social network at my level who I know are struggling because they're expecting to work miracles on a very tight budget under a leadership that really don't seem to be engaged or understand the risks that they're sitting with. I think things are changing. I think things are going to get better because when you look at the news, I mean, it's day in, day out, you're seeing compromises. You look at all this, the Move IT or Move It compromise recently, that woke a few people up.
Definitely. Yeah, because it is interesting because I remember at the beginning of the pandemic and like right before the pandemic, if you went to like a networking event with CISOs, the amount of drinks that were being poured was something of concern. Because it's stress. Like there's been so many research around it since like 2019 showcasing like CISOs, they were drinking heavily to help reduce the stress, that they haven't been able to have time with their family nor their friends. And it was a drive for them to either leave the industry or to try to whatever they can to change the industry to include them, and to also to ensure that the industry is working with the companies of what is it to be a safe environment for people that are, CISOs, because we need them. We need them more than ever before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it does vary from industry to industry as well. When I was working in the construction industry, a gigantic global construction company, from a cybersecurity perspective, I did describe it as a bit like the Wild West. And I'd say that's quite, and they actually ended up having, they had a big ransomware attack. But 150-year-old construction company, they build stuff. Cybersecurity is one of those things that's something to do with those computers. And unfortunately, that particular company were very, very responsive. The leadership team were really, really good. So, we got there with that. And actually, the construction industry as a whole is actually picking things up really, really quickly and really fast. But I think it does depend on the industry you're in and your risk profile. Some companies, are going to have a much higher propensity for attack than others. Finance is often, a typical classical case. So, I think there are a few companies that I probably wouldn't want to be a CISO for, because I think the stress level would just be too much. But then you've got different types of CISOs, and some people thrive on that. You've got your transformation CISO, you've got your post-breach CISO, you've got your steady state CISO. I would, your post-breach CISO is the one that's going to be the stressful out of those three, I think. So depending on the state of the company and the reason the CISO has been brought in also has an impact on the stress levels. But some people thrive in that space.
Yeah, I know, it's true. It's more of, I feel relaxed and calm when in the middle of a storm, versus if there was no storm, I'm going to feel anxious and not be on my toes or something kind of thing. I have heard about this. Yeah, we all have wild backgrounds, I think, in so many ways. That's why we're in InfoSec. So when we're talking about compliance and everything, and especially with CISOs, and ensuring that, the team is doing well and everything's up to date, have you noticed too much of compliance really focusing on security team wellness?
Do you know, that's a really interesting question, and I wouldn't say that I've seen anything that would suggest that cyber team wellness is particularly high on the agenda. I've been very within the teams I've worked with. I've always been sort of very concerned and with my team, their well-being, and I often say, with the team, like the team I'm with at the moment, okay, I'm the CISO, but I'm a member of the team, and the only difference between them and me is that I'm the one that gets into trouble if we screw it up. And work with them and be mindful. And for a CISO, the key thing is to gain the trust of your team. I'm very frustrated with autocratic CISOs. I know one or two of them. Mm-hmm. I'm the CISO and you're whatever.
You'll listen to me and what I tell you what to do.
You do as you're told. In fact, there's a few that come to mind. That's way out of how I work. And you're not going to have team well-being in that sort of autocratic environment. But where you have an environment where you are a team and the CISO is just another member of the team, and you look out for each other, you be mindful of their circumstances and their mental health. It's a big thing in our world, and look after them, and eventually, you gain their trust. They'll look after you. I often say to my team, that one of their primary objectives within my team is to keep me out of trouble. So that's really
it's mutual respect. It goes both ways. You do well, I'll do well. We're all going to cover each other. That's good teamwork.
I think mental health is a big issue in these cyber teams, because you're on the edge all the time. You can never relax. So when we talk about stress, and I think stress and mental health are opposite sides of the same coin. And you have to be very mindful of the different people that you've got within your team. And I know there's particularly there's a lot of interest in neurodiversity at the moment, and the benefits that neurodiverse people can bring to the cyber world. The way they think, the way their mind works, the sort of some analytical natures and things like that, could be really powerful tool for cyber analysts. But obviously, you need to be very mindful of that neurodiverse people are different, and you need to consider that, not just for their own well-being, but also the well-being of the rest of the team. When you've got a very diverse set of people working together, and of course, that a good CISO can understand that and work it so that you have a cohesive team of very different people that aren't burning out on stress or at each other's throats or what have you, and work as a cohesive team. That's quite a challenge, actually.
Yeah, it is one of those things, like, to create a belonging workplace is to allow people to have the ability to think the way that they think and to utilize that in a sense. Like, if someone has like ADHD, for example, they may need structure, but they also need to be able to go out of their box. If you condense them too much, they're not going to feel able to explore and let their brain do the wonders that it has.
Yeah.
And it's different for someone who's like neurotypical, for example, where, maybe they don't need as much structure. They just want to, get through their task in a certain way. And having to learn how each person operates and how their brain works and takes in knowledge and then like learns and connects. It's so fascinating. But to create a welcoming environment where you have such diverse minds in the room, because that collaboration, if you are a great CISO, you're able to really bring that teamwork in a place where you have what would be the example of diversity, which is you're going to find something that someone else didn't find. You're going to patch things differently, faster possibly, but it's the fact that you have all these wonderful people being able to be like, hey, I see this. This is what I see. And then having other people acknowledge that. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, because you need, and sometimes that's because in our cyber world, you need people to think differently sometimes, because things are changing so fast, unpredictable, new threat vectors and things like that occurring all the time. It does need a different way of looking at things sometimes, and I've been very lucky that I've had the opportunity to have very diverse and very wide-ranging people in my teams, certainly over the last number of years or so. And again, I've gone about it where I know what I need from a team. Now I just need to find the right people. And so, from a diversity and inclusion perspective, I don't, subscribe to the sort of that you've got to have X number of women or X number of I just want the right people. If they happen to be whatever, fine, whatever. I'm not fast. I know what I need to do these roles. And I've been very lucky that purely, when I was at the construction firm, actually, I had quite a big team, and they were very diverse. But it wasn't because I chose them to be that way. It's because I was asked particular roles, and it showed that you can build diversity into the team without actually looking for it.
Yeah, I think we all have some sort of difference for every, in every single room, which is fantastic. Sometimes the diverse is the things that aren't apparent to the eye.
Yeah, very much so. It's it's an interesting journey.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, the compliance journey is just going to keep on going different routes, and let's hope that it gets a little bit faster for AI and ML security purposes. Because I don't know about you, but that keeps me up at night now, officially.
Oh way, it's I was trying to think what keeps me up. What do you think when you say that? What keeps me awake at night? I always find the biggest risk, and I wonder if many other CISOs find this. Our biggest risk is you don't know what you don't know, and that's what keeps me awake at night. I always worry, what is it I don't know?
The what ifs just start playing in your head. But
Yeah.
But to be able to acknowledge that, I think is a good positive thing. If we don't acknowledge that, we don't know everything, I think that's a problem right there. Because I feel like those tend to be like people that are very stuck, and they won't be able to understand other people, won't be able to manage people in a way where it's empowering. Instead, it's disempowers. So I think having that curiosity, the what ifs, and the things that keep you up at night, also shows that you're probably a good leader, Ian. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. You'd have to ask my team that. I'm not sure. It depends what frame of mind you get them in. Will dictate what answer you get.
Exactly. Well, Ian, it was lovely to have you on here. I'll have to get you back on soon. And everyone, I'll see you on the next episode. And until then, stay safe and have fun. Thank you again, Ian.
Thank you.
Have
Thank
a wonderful
you very much,
evening.
Chloé. Take care. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you learned something new and this story made you think, then share ITSP Magazine with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our columns. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.